and welcome to episode 42 of our SAP on Azure YouTube podcast. Today is May 21st, and together with Robert and Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So in the last few episodes, we had already talked about some ways where we help customers getting started by running their SAP environment on Azure. We have the cloud adoption framework. We have a few other things. And this week, we invited Robert and Petra to the show to talk a little about the what is it called? The generator,
SAP Getting Started Guide on DevOps Generator.
Thank you very much, Petra. Yeah, exactly. So, but before we go there,
it sounds like landing on the Mars, you know.
Well, it's a bit like landing on the Mars.
SAP always is. Or can be sometimes.
But now we have some additional good guidelines and how to land on Mars, basically. But before we go there, let's quickly take a look at this week, the news from this week. And I actually want to start with the Power Platform. So I think we have talked about this for quite some time. There's this connector that allows you to connect from your Power Platform, Power Automate, and Power Apps to your SAP system. We have there a certified SAP ERP connector that is that allows you to connect to BAPIs and RFCs. This connector has been in private preview, or no, in public preview for quite some time, and now it's general available. So if you want to connect to your BAPIs, to your RFCs in the backend system, then this is definitely something that you now can really use in a productive way. In this blog from Samir, he also talks about the custom connector. So I think we already talked about that as well, where with this custom connector, you can easily connect to an OData service. And there's also this example on GitHub available that you can easily select to connect to your SAP system. So that's another thing that is highlighted in this blog. One thing that I'm extremely happy about is that we are also starting a private preview for an official OData connector, so that you don't need to create your own custom connector, but you can really select an OData connector, which then obviously allows you to connect to OData services in the SAP system. And if you are interested in joining in testing out this OData connector, then there's a form attached to it. So basically, we just need some information, what you want to do, need to check some requirements there. But if you fill this out, then we will reach out to you and most likely give you access to this OData connector. Again, it's a private preview right now. So one of the main things that we try to do with this connector is to really get your feedback, to really see if there are any gaps, if there are some bugs still in the connector, obviously, before we then open this up for a public preview. So again, if you are using Power Platform, if you want to connect to an SAP system, either go with the BAPI and RFC approach using the existing SAP ERP connector. If not, if you want to consume OData services, then I personally would be very excited if you sign up to this private preview and we can work together there on testing out the connector and seeing if everything is working as expected, and obviously also get your feedback. Again, we know that there are some limitations with the private preview right now, and in order to prioritize the next steps, the next development steps, we are obviously very much interested in the feedback from the community, from the customers. Good. The next thing is security. I think that's we had Evren on the show a few weeks ago, where we talked about the zero trust model, and I think this fits extremely well now. We have a public preview for Azure Sentinel and SAP threat monitoring solutions. So basically, this is an enhancement of the Azure Sentinel application or service that we have on Azure, which now allows you to connect to your SAP system and do a threat monitoring on the SAP system. I think this fits extremely well again in this zero trust story that we already talked about, and I think this definitely gives customers a lot of additional possibilities to enhance the overall security of their SAP system simply by using another service that is part of the Azure platform that you can just enable and connect and configure, and then also really use Azure Sentinel for your SAP systems. So I think that's another very interesting a solution that is now available.
So it's not just theory, right, and PowerPoints and landing zone. I mean, all that as well, which we need, but also a product which is basically doing the work, a cloud service, even better to say, right?
Yeah.
So this is really, I mean, making the whole story round.
And what I like this making the whole story round. I think we can see really more and more services on Azure that in the beginning obviously had nothing to do with SAP, but now they are really also embracing explicitly SAP. Look at Azure Backup, or look at the Azure Monitoring that we talked about. All of these services now really get also an SAP flavor, so to say. And I think it's great to see that, if you are running SAP on Azure, it's not only this infrastructure component, but it's really all these additional services that help and simplify the way how you run SAP.
Because this is an additional value, basically what Microsoft is giving here. And what I like, it's basically, it's a product and it's cloud service. It's not something like, I don't know, sorry, Microsoft System Center, but it's a box product which you need to install it, operate it, run it, patch it, and then here's just click, cloud service, connect, and just use it. And that's really extremely simplify the overall management and reduce the TCO. Yeah. And this is really great stuff. I mean, a big value basically to the customer here.
Yeah. So check it out. With this, let's switch over to the SAP side. One thing that I was super excited to read, DJ Adams talked about the Open Documentation Initiative. So basically, in the past, there was a lot of feedback on the documentation side on the SAP content that the documentation is sometimes outdated or there are issues there. And I think SAP already showed very nicely with the tutorials that are available on GitHub that you can actually provide feedback. You can contribute to some of the content or some of the documentations, the tutorials that are available from SAP, but it was not so much available on the official SAPHelp.com portal. And now with this open documentation initiative, SAP is basically following a very similar approach than what Microsoft is doing. So I'm sure if you're aware, if you go to docs.microsoft.com, this is all hosted on GitHub, and anyone is allowed to provide feedback. So you can just click on the feedback button and provide feedback and enhancement. And SAP is starting the very same approach here. So whenever you go to the documentation, I think SAP is starting with with only the Business Application Studio and some other areas, but you just open up these pages, and then there's really this edit and feedback functionalities which allow you to create, I think, pull requests and stuff like that. So very similar like what we are doing on the Microsoft side. So I think that's a beautiful way to engage with the community and help overall to improve the documentations also on the SAP side. Good. The next thing that I quickly want to talk about is the SAP Learning Hub. There's now a free edition available for students. So I think, in the spirit, again, we talked about learning and making learning on the SAP side a little more available to the broader audience. And I think, I mean, I'm not a student anymore, but reading through this, it really sounds like SAP is addressing now the university students there to give them access to learning materials that is typically only available via a paid way. I mean, obviously there is open.sap.com. I think the Open SAP courses are really amazing, but there's still this official SAP Learning Hub content. And now with this new step, they're really embracing students and helping them to get access to these to this learning material that is typically only behind a if you pay something accessible to you. Good. Then let's switch over to SAPPHIRE. SAPPHIRENOW is coming up. Starting beginning of June, there are quite a lot of sessions available. The session catalog is now online. Obviously, there are the keynotes and everything that we talked about already. But there's a lot of content, additional content there as well available as well. I just searched for Microsoft, and there are 7 sessions there regarding or concerning Microsoft. There are sessions really from Microsoft, from the finance department at Microsoft. So they're really providing some insights on how they are working with SAP. So we talked about SAP, Microsoft running SAP in a big way, and obviously there are a lot of lessons learned also from Microsoft. So in these sessions, we are providing some insights on how we are actually implementing and working with SAP, how we benefit from running SAP on Azure. So I think these are probably also some interesting sessions that you can watch. Okay, so with this, this was basically it. Now, a quick recap. We talked about the cloud adaptation framework before. We had Mark Henry on the call talking about the enterprise scale for SAP on Azure documentations and everything here. Then we had also talked about and now here it is, the Azure DevOps Demo Generator and the content that is there available also from the SAP side. And we thought it would be a good idea to take a closer look at that because the demo generator really provides a GitHub repository basically with lots of different actions that allow you to then walk through and work through different items. And instead of me or us talking about this, I think it would be fantastic, or it is really great that we have Robert and Petra in the call today who can talk a little about this in more detail. So with this, Robert, Petra, maybe both of you can quickly introduce yourself, and then I'm looking forward to what you can show us in more detail about the generator.
Petra, would you take the honors?
Yeah, sure. So Petra Peters, I was part of the SAP on Azure fast track team, so guided customers through the last 15-16 months through their journey to onboard SAP systems to Azure. And I was working together with Robert and some other colleagues of this team on the initiative that we are now going to present here.
And I'm Robert Biro. I am still part of the, so Petra used to be my former colleague. I'm on the Fast Track for Azure team. I work as a customer engineer with customers. For those who don't know the program, it's a Fast Track for Azure. It's a program that is run from Azure engineering to work directly with customers. And make sure everything works right the first time around. And this is really where this idea came out from. So we do work with plenty of customers of different size and shapes and different regions and backgrounds. And a lot of the feedback, a lot of the topics that we have heard over the years is it can be difficult. SAP sometimes can be a difficult product. So we have, as a SAP user, you have to know all the SAP nodes, keep on top of them, updates, and on top of that comes the platform layer in Azure, which for some customers might be completely brand new to them. So it is the right choice. Of course, there is a lot of documentation available which go into great detail. But sometimes, especially when you know yourself and you start with a book or with a task, you get this is 50 pages you have to go through. Where do I start? Like they say, how do I?
Everybody are nodding.
Yeah.
Like they say, everybody says, how do you eat an elephant? You get started and one bite at a time. But of course, there's ways to make it easier. So this is where we came in with what we call the Getting Started Guide. It is leveraging Azure DevOps as a tool to create your project for your SAP migration, to start your learning how to use SAP in Azure, how to use Azure correctly for SAP, and assign these tasks to your team, have your starting board to go deeper and target it into the documentation. And let's use the time to do a quick demo. What is it? So let's not just speak about it, maybe just show and tell is the best way to learn, they say. So let me share a screen.
And I think what was a little interesting for me when I tested it out. I mean, when I first of all thought of Azure DevOps, I'm thinking of pipelines, of CI/CD and stuff like that. But you're actually leveraging the boards functionality, so really to track the functionality, features and stuff like that. So Azure DevOps has these multiple solutions and opportunities, and you're just picking the boards functionalities.
Exactly. It's a bit more focused on kind of project management that is possible in this approach.
That's a very, very valid point, because exactly like you said, you think of Azure DevOps, this is a development tool. I need to write code. You don't have to. You have this boards functionality. And at the same time, if you want to, you have everything already in your project in here, your key people. You can leverage the other functionality as well. But for our intent, we only use the boards. So there is a website called Azure DevOps Demo Generator. Now, the demo is the template, the content that we have created and that we curate and update over time. So let me quickly sign in. I have to do it here because it times out very quickly. So bear with me for a second. Now, once I have signed in onto the Azure DevOps Generator, I have to choose my organization where I want to deploy the demo that I choose. I have to choose the template. And the template for SAP is to be found under the Azure community. You can already see here's SAP on Azure. There is other things, Sentinel, WVD, Cloud Adoption Framework, and so on and so on. So SAP on Azure is one of them. Let me select the template, give it a name. So SAP started guide YouTube May 21. I'll just give it a name. And I'll click create project. Simple as that. While it's being created, maybe speak a little bit together that you need to have already an Azure DevOps organization created. So to do that, I believe this comes free of charge, but we would have to check your licensing terms, of course. If it's the first time you are working with Azure DevOps, you would go to dev.azure.com, create an organization for yourself, and then you will be able to select it here. Or I believe there is also if you saw the sign-in screen at the very beginning, if you don't have a sign-in yet, you would have the opportunity to register there.
Robert, do you know who is operating the demo generator? This is not coming from the Fast Track team, right? This is something that is hosted by someone else, but everyone is able to provide or to create new templates, or how is it?
That's correct. That's correct. There is a team. It is all on GitHub available. Let me quickly search for the link while this is creating Azure DevOps Generator on GitHub. There is a team available with everything. The tool itself and these templates are public. publicly accessible, available. This is the link, Microsoft Azure DevOps Demo Generator. The contents and the templates are located here, so it's not something hidden behind doors. Everybody's welcome to collaborate. There is a collaboration, information, contributions, how to do them, and so on.
Cool.
So it seems coming from Microsoft itself.
Looks
It
like,
is, yes.
Yes, and there is a blog availability available on Tech Community that is helping a bit with the different steps that Robert is now showing here, which also includes links to the official docs, the Microsoft docs on how to handle the DevOps generator when it comes to, because you have to first set up the organization, and so you will find some more details, background details about that in the blog and on the docs.
Exactly. And I am successful. Your project is successfully provisioned. So I have now created a new project that we gave a name to using this template. So now this is what you would get yourself if you do create use this getting started guide. So you get an Azure DevOps project. The best way to consume the content we find, this is it, the content is under the board section. The best way probably would be to go to Backlogs, which gives you a nice tiered overview of the topic areas, which we created, which contain the actual content. So for example, if you do starting, if it goes logically, if I start with the foundations and I want to just think about my Azure subscriptions and access guide, and what do I do to consider, there is a short documentation or description available with plenty of links to specifically the correct part of the vast Azure documentation, not necessarily just SAP, but the general. So like the cloud adoption framework would be linked herein. How do I use role-based access control, RBAC? The link leads you straight to the documentation, sometimes even a deeper link within the document itself, so you don't have to read through a longer document. This is the intent on the content that we have created. The intent is not to recreate the documentation that existing. There's plenty of good documentation. The intent is to give you a structured way to access this documentation and straight, easier, and piecemeal the documentation into logical tasks for the team to use.
Great.
And the
basic.
Excuse me, the beautiness is just following up on what you said, Robert. The beautiness is that since the links are always related to the official Microsoft docs, you will never come into the situation that you are running against outdated information, right? Because there is no, because the official Microsoft docs are updated on a regular basis, and you always have the fresh information that is available at hand.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is, I just want to point it out. It's there, and also because they're changing all the time. It's just crazy. And also it is nice that you also jump into certain sections of the document, which might be also long. So you jump it also in a proper place and making it easier for others to consume it and easily come on a proper place without much effort and to search for it. Nice.
Exactly. And if you think about it, we have a two-level content. So if there's a kind of a heading or a section, in this case, foundations, networking, and so on, and the actual task in Azure DevOps nomenclature, if I click on the task, I can assign this to Robert. This is for
great.
you. You take care of it. I can set deadlines, use the whole planning functionality that ADO, Azure DevOps, offers. So, and I can set up my team. I can track the status. This is currently being active, and so on and so on. And add my own tasks as well, subtasks if I ever wanted to. So while I'm in here, I can do another task. Go ahead. So this is not what we provide. This is what Azure DevOps provides to you as a consumer of it. A very nice way to organize the open tasks for the team.
So means they can also customize this framework according to their specific additional needs.
Exactly. And you actually raised a very good point, which might not be immediately apparent to viewers. If I go back to this DevOps generator, it takes a template which exists, which contains the content that we have created, with the links, with the documentation, the focused part of the documentation, the important part. What I say is, if you read anything, read this at least. And it creates your organization. Your organization, or uses it as a project in your organization. This is yours. This is not shared with anybody else. This is in your own Azure DevOps organization. This is your project. You can do whatever you want with it. You can give team access and so on. It's not a shared, it's not running. The demo generator creates the content or pushes the content into your own project. So this is entirely for you to customize, change, and leverage in any way you want.
So I think for me, one of the benefits from what it looks like is if I look at the Cloud Adaptation Framework, or if I look at all the documentation that is out there, that's documentation that is a static page, and obviously I can create links or whatever, but I need to go there, I need to read through this. And here I have a guided procedure, so to say. I have all the required steps in here. And if you go back to this Azure Subscription Access Management, for example, so the first task there, then this is the template that is provided for me. But for example, here it says ensure sufficient vCPU quota. So potentially what I could do now is I would read through this and I would say, oh, this is something that I need to do. So let me create, I don't know, 4 additional subtasks for this one and assign it to colleagues in the Azure admin area that please create a ticket with Microsoft and increase the quota, or that I use this as a starting point to really make it for me as a customer. So really specific for me. Another customer might not even have this problem. So they can just either remove the task completely or set the task immediately to complete it or whatever. But this is really a document or a tool that I can work with. Not only the documentation that I would read through, but I would really work on this in my project.
Exactly like you said. And it is structured in not a checklist format, but we do have thought about to structure it logically. So you don't start with the backup, you start with the foundations. And for example, the naming standards, very, very first topic that you need to, with links to the CAT guide, and that you need to do. And like you said, leverage ADO if you want to organize your team, to check the state, check when it's due, and the dependencies between these tasks. Absolutely.
And that's actually another point. Sorry, Goran, just one quick thing. With the strong naming standards, I guess with the naming standards in the documentation, this is generic. So yeah, so it's part of the Cloud Adoption Framework. It provides probably some recommendations. This is how you could do it. And then again, in DevOps, in Azure DevOps, what I could do is I could create another task where I explicitly say, based on the documentation from the Cloud Adoption Framework, these are now the naming standards that are required for our company, where, I don't know, maybe company name _ resource group or whatever, but really make it specific instead of this generic documentation, which already provides me a lot of guidelines. Now I can make it really specific and also documented here in Azure DevOps, for example.
Exactly.
And you actually do have a check boxes in a sense because you have a status. So it's active, it's running, it's assigned, it's completed. So I mean, it's still a kind of checkbox in a sense of tracking the status.
And there's actually a different view you can leverage. Under the board section, there is the board item, which does exactly this. So it's by default by status, new, active, resolved, closed. I can fund the foundation. Oh, this is done. Or I'll move it over to, I can do a drag and drop. I'm not sure if I can do, I don't remember now. I think I have to do it by this way. There we go. It's already assigned to me and so on. This is done. This is done. So I have a visual representation of the same content given by ADO.
And then the whole team could access, I mean, everyone who has access to these boards could then get an easy overview of where are we in the whole process, what is still missing, what do I need to, what are my action items that are still open, what can I assign to someone else to work with. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah,
exactly. The backlog is then the structured view, the reading view, as sometimes I call it, that you go through one by one. And boards or even sprints would be then what you can do as you leverage it to assign the topics within your team.
And I think, as you said, this is not new content that you created. I mean, not documentation that you created, but it is really based on the cloud adoption framework, based on the other documentation that is available. So it's basically just maybe a restructuring, regrouping, a retracking of existing documentations that is already available.
Under specific tags, right? So if you, for instance, would like to have the information filtered by, I'm running SAP on SQL Server, so that would be possible to filter it in that way. And maybe, Robert, you want to go to the query section to showcase this one as well. So it is also possible to filter this content, which is already condensed, into special to a special view that really fits to your project.
Exactly. It does come with pre-delivered queries. So we do, actually, just let me quickly go back to the backlogs. You might have noticed there are some tags. Each item is assigned to some tags. To keep it simple, we have just a few, but there are some pre-delivered queries. And exactly like you said, Petra, for example, this is an entirely Oracle deployment. I don't really want to see the stuff for HANA because I don't care about it. Filtered just for Oracle. I have the similar view just for which applies to either it's generic or it's targeted for Oracle, for example.
Okay,
I don't even see the HANA stuff. So just see from high availability, I see only one item. Whereas if I go on the backlogs view, I would see far more content, which might confuse me because I need this and that and other things. And queries, if I want to speak, I want to use only Oracle functions or DB2. There I go, much fewer items, less confusion, easier, straight to the point. What do I need when I want to be successful with SAP on Azure deployment?
I'm just thinking loud because with those current available and coming improvements of Azure, SAP on Azure automation, if it would be possible to integrate it and trigger it, let's say even from here, so you define, okay, I'm creating a science fiction scenario now a bit. You define naming convention and say, okay, poof, just trigger, deploy me the whatever there. Just maybe a thought for future.
Definitely imaginable, some tighter integration, yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So have you been using this already? I guess from the Fast Track team, I guess that you're using this already with some customers. Have you seen other customers adopting this already? Or I think this is fairly new, so maybe not too many.
Yes, I think it's been 2 weeks officially published, and it's pretty new. I think we had a few customers where we showed this concept and this information. The idea is why we don't want to front teach. There's no point. You make it easier for you, the customer, to consume what is available, and that's the whole intent. This exists. I have it in 5 minutes, not even 1 minute deployed. I have access to what I need. I don't need to, I should probably read the other 30 pages, but I'll be honest, if I have a project and a deadline, what do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the intent. So yes, this is the idea that we enable or use this tool, this content for our customer work, but this is out there, it's publicly available, and like I said, it will be updated going forward in case links change or new topics are added. For example, on the bottom part. Yes, please, go ahead.
I'm just also thinking, because customer have ability to customize the solution. Could they also create, based on that customization, a new template, which could be again reused or republished maybe?
Yes. So actually, this is the topic on the generator product itself. Yes, it does have that functionality. So if I go back to the Azure DevOps Generator, I can select build my own template. Now, by build my own template, it takes me to a page where I choose my organization, my project, and I can click on Analyze, and it will create a zip file. The zip file is the template, and that can be anything. It could be code-based. You would have to double-check the documentation for the DevOps Generator, what it exports, but I don't think it exports, for example, Git repositories and things like that. But you would have to double-check that and build your own template, and either use it privately or check it in as available. So private content can be then deployed into a new ADO project through here. I can choose a file to the previously created template, or it can be published here, the same zip file.
Cool. That's nice.
But so when I don't want to go that far and create my own template, but I just want to provide feedback, is there a way how let's say I'm using this and I notice that a link is no longer working. Is there an easy way to provide feedback to you and the team that is updating this documentation, or should I just send you an email and provide feedback, or what would be a good way if I see that a link is broken or something is wrong or should be enhanced in the documentation? Is there a place how I as a customer could provide feedback to you?
I'm thinking built-in, no. However, Petra, did we document a link in the blog post or a email address? If not, we can definitely update that.
I think we should update it, yes, because we don't.
That's a fantastic point, Holger.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you would put it as a kind of small documentation on a GitHub, small description, and then okay, that could be as well used as a kind of feedback again, because there's a GitHubs give you a document when you write the documentation, you have this ability to create a feedback, right, or request.
Yeah, but thank you for bringing that up. That is something that definitely should somehow be investigated on.
Absolutely, fantastic idea. Yeah.
Cool.
I just wanted to very last maybe touch upon, so we had the content on the basic or the normal requirements from a infrastructure deployment, backup, disaster, high availability, security. The guide also contains some documents and readings on what we call community articles, so going to blog posts. So the intent is also, especially this section, because the top section should ideally not change that much, but any, for example, like you just mentioned today earlier, the public preview for Azure Sentinel would be logically then placed into the SIEM tool integration, where it's, I think, just basic. So, for example, this link would need to be updated to the public preview, and other sections added and other topics added in here. That's the intent of this, of the last section that we do have created.
Oh, but that's also really great, and I see a lot of topics that go beyond this, the pure infrastructure, and really, I can see the Snooze SAP with automation and Power Platform that you had also worked on, that both Goran and Robert, you had worked on.
Correct.
Is there, but then there also SIEM tools integration. There's DevOps, infrastructure as code, global access to SAP Fiori. Great, yeah. So it's really also the next step. So once I have my SAP system running on Azure, what are the next steps that I can do with this? So I think that's also really nice.
Exactly, the surround with other native services, because as we know, the journey doesn't stop once I'm in Azure.
Yeah. Cool.
Sure. Nice. I love it, really love it. It's very, very practical. I mean, and this is typically what I also notice many partners or customers who are implementing, they just want to start to work and not read 1,000 of lines of documents and pages. Still, they should read it, yes. But anyway, this helps them to structure the whole approach here and do one by one and track it as well. So really nice, love it, really. Yeah.
And pick another example. Last one, I promise. For example, monitoring. I have an SAP systems, but I have in the SAP documentation, I will not verify very little information on the infrastructure monitoring, but it is important from a SAP perspective. There we go. How do I do it? How do I write my log queries? How do I set up alerting? Straightforward into the how-to section. This is how I do it. I don't have to read 50 pages if I don't want to. I can get started and get my hands dirty immediately.
Cool. Yeah, cool.
Oh, really nice, yeah. And I think when we end here, I think the really beautiful thing is, as you mentioned in the beginning, Azure DevOps, there is a free tier available. So there's really something that I can use for free. And I think with this, I can use the generator, the demo generator, to create this content in my free Azure DevOps environment. So if I really want to get started and take a look at this, there's really nothing stopping me. I can easily do that. So I think there's no entry boundary or whatever you might call it. I can really easily get started with this.
Precisely.
Cool. Good. No, I think that's really great, and I think it's just a really nice addition to the topics that we had in previous episodes, where we really talked about how to get started. How do we help customers get started with SAP on Azure? And as you said, there's so much documentation out there, and with this approach, you make this life much easier. Instead of going to Google or to Bing all the time and searching for the relevant documentation, this is maybe really a fantastic starting point to then walk through and read everything that's required to get started.
And I believe you will continue to update the source template with the new stuff, right? Yeah.
Yes, we would like to keep it in the team to do at least a quarterly update review, link checking, if not or more often. But I'll definitely take that suggestion. I don't know why we have missed that. The feedback or more direct feedback channel from a customer, the customer voice. That's really important. Thank you for that.
Cool.
Nice.
Good. Then I think that's it. Thank you very much, Petra, Robert, for joining and for this much deeper insights in the generator. I think the last time we only had quickly talked about it, so it's really good to have seen it in action. Thank you very much for that. Maybe some other time we will see you again. I'm sure there are a lot of things that you're also contributing in addition to the Power App that you already contributed. Then now here the generator. I'm sure we'll see you again in the podcast. Good.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining, and see you next week again.
Time.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Bye.